Welcome to Deliver More, the Teflon Coating Talk Show that sprays Teflon knowledge to parts unknown. I am your host, Francesca, with Intech MKT. And with me today are the Teflon guys from Fluorogistx, Mike Patterson and Chris Lord, who we all know and love better as Wolfy. Welcome back, guys.
Good to be back.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, we're excited to talk because today we are going to be covering everything that you, the audience, you coders need to know, need to say, need to ask, need to do whenever a prospect wants to run a test, a trial with a Teflon solution. So that by the time we're finished this episode, you're going to have a perfect blueprint for how to run trials without any tribulations.
Amazing. Wow. Well played.
Everybody listening knows that Teflon salespeople usually work very hard to get new business in the door because it's not easy. I mean, you have to identify the right person. You have to connect with them at this perfect time when they're aware of a need for better performance because their crappy coding, created a problem or just became some sort of pain point. And just as the salesperson is ready to be like, yeah, perfect, I've got you a solution. They're like, whoa, hold on. I need to see some samples so I can do a trial to test the solution. Okay, so that's the scene that we are in right now. Mike, I know you're familiar with it. So let me start with probably the easiest question so far for the whole episode.
Right, layup.
How do you determine if an opportunity is actually worthy of a trial?
Well, that's an interesting question about whether it's worthy of a trial. Because I think even for a small piece of business, I think our coders will many times provide a few sample parts for people to test and say, hey, I like part A better than part B. Now give me a quote to do 200 of them or whatever, right? But I think what we're really talking about here and when it's worthy of a trial is really a full-blown study where we're partnering with our customers, with the coders, and with the end user, the manufacturer, the OEM. So it's really like a three-party to everybody's working together to find the solution that's going to deliver the performance that's going to improve and solve problems at the OEM level and create steady stream work for our customers and steady stream sales for Fluorogistx. So I think a lot of these that we get involved in on the personal level is because they're big opportunities. So these are the ones that are high visibility at the OEM level. It could be even something where it's like a plant initiative is to reduce wastewater, so they want to use Teflon instead of whatever. So you just never know where it starts, but we know where we want it to finish in terms of being able to create a compelling case for our solution that will create, a win for us and our customers and as at the OEM level too.
Yeah. So it's usually high stakes are on the table when you're brought in. And
right.
Then this is when these are the kind of trials that we're really kind of guiding people through in this episode, because there's a lot that has to go into a good trial, I'm sure. But before we even go there, can you give me some idea of what a bad trial looks like? If they don't follow our advice in this episode, what could happen?
I can, because I've been involved in these and I've learned, over the years what a bad trial looks like because I've done them. So, it could be something like you give them test parts that never go into test. They get lost in the sauce. Or they get, you give them parts and the person will never call you back from the plant. Could be the test parameters change and what you thought the test was going to be X now is something totally different than that. So, there's those sorts of things. Sometimes people say, hey, if this runs 1,000 cycles, that's going to be great. And you're like, hey, awesome. It just ran 1,500. And they're like, no, I meant 3,000 cycles. So the finish line moves sometimes. A really tough one is when you're barking up the wrong tree and you think you're working with a decision maker and you're just working with a guy who's reporting to the decision maker, and then you don't even ever have a conversation with that person, and he's the judge and jury of whether your solution's good or bad. Or it could even be, as simple as you put the wrong coating on. If you didn't have all the information about what the coating needs to do in the environment, in the process, you could put the wrong coating on, and now oh, Teflon didn't work. We don't. All right, let's try something different, totally different.
Yeah, you
So
write
like,
off the whole solution because of the
yep,
wrong coding.
yep. So there's a lot of pitfalls of a bad trial, or a trial that doesn't get us to where we want to go.
Yeah, I'll say that's a lot, and it's great to avoid all of those things. Please learn, from past mistakes that you don't even need to make anymore. You can just have us. We've already made them. It's good. Learn from that. And now that we know what not to do, Wolfie, what is the very first step in running an actual successful trial?
Well, I mean, you have to really understand what brought them to you in the first place, kind of get that real pain point and get an understanding is what are they not getting today? And that could be a multitude of things. I mean, it could be poor performance. It could be poor performance from another vendor. Let's say that I partnered with it, doesn't get me coding in time, or I'm always having delays with my coder because he never has products. So you
Mm-hmm.
kind of have to, flush that out first just to get a kind of a base as to what is it that's going on there. And then on the flip side, what's the optimal? Like, what is it that you want to get? Like, what perfect world, what's it look like? But like when you're having these conversations with people, some of the things that you have to filter through is the terminology that they use in their shop. And because like we'll have people that will call us all the time that will say, "Hey, this piece is failing. It needs better wear resistance," because they'll see like maybe the coating is yeah, has left the surface. It's not there, or there's areas where the coating has been removed, and it's we can look at that and say like, listen, I can appreciate you thinking it's wear. It may not be wear. That could be a
Mm-hmm.
bad coding job. You know,
Yeah.
the coding may be fine. You just got a bad piece or a bad set, or that's not wear. There's actually permeation going on there. Coating's lifting off, so that's not wear at all. We just need something that maybe has a little more chemical resistance or something like that. So there, you have to dig in because they're not in our world. They know is what they see, and when they see it, they just go like, "Yeah, it wears off."
Mm-hmm.
And and we get that a lot, surprisingly. But then you have to find out, are they looking for a new partner, with us, or they just just want to run a trial? Like what is going on? Like, is this business that we're gonna get, or am I just doing some work for you? You have a shop and you don't have all the capabilities, but I got all the coding, so I'm gonna do a little bit of work for you. So you kind of have to filter out there too, like. What is it that this guy's looking for? Is he looking, am I going to get business, or am I just kind of his trial guy
Yeah.
and I'm going to
So
help him through a bad spot?
it's all that background kind of legwork first. It's like let's
Sure.
understand where things are and where they
Hmm.
stand. That makes sense. And those are probably pretty easy questions for them to answer, right?
You, yeah, you say, well, yeah, we were talking about this. We talk about it all the time, and you would think, but we're always running into situations where the information or the questions that we're asking, the information is not there. Or you might say, like, what's the operational temp in your environment? And they didn't come to the table with that information, or like, I don't really know. I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
that's important in our world because that determines what we may or may not recommend. Or they don't want to give you information. They don't want to share. They're holding back, or they might even come to you and go like, Chris, I'd like to tell you more, but we're gonna have to sign an NDA. And you're like, "Oh, okay." I mean, which is just, paperwork and then you're kind of and now you really don't get anywhere past that if that roadblock gets put in front of you because now you're waiting for that to get approved or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's great when when they're ready and they come in and they have the information because we have a whole list of questions we're going to ask you because it's not going to be like just, oh, you use this coding. Well, here's my alternative. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be more than that because maybe that's not the right alternative. Maybe I got something even better for you.
A lot of times when when we get involved in trials, it's because something's also changed at the manufacturing location. So it could be now there's gluten-free products being made, and that's stickier than what it was before, or it's got whole grains, and now that's more abrasive than the prior dough. So now we need to have a different solution because something is environmentally changed at their end. So that's the other part too, is we can't just assume that everything's steady state at the manufacturing because it rarely is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So you have to understand this background information. And then, Mike, what I'm hearing is like, then you have to get into maybe what they're currently doing? Is that what is next?
Yep, absolutely. So, if we, for us to be able to really kind of do our detective work, we need to be able to understand what's on that part now. You know, obviously the environment, what it's being used for, temperatures, chemicals, any of that sort of obvious stuff. But really, like, what's there? How's it performing? When it fails, how does it fail? How long? How many cycles? Like, we have to understand all that stuff too. Like, how do they measure success? How do they measure performance? Like, is it just cycles, or is it a quality of finished product? Is there some people, like I know in food manufacturing, they'll measure in the waffles, like a big industrial place, they're measuring wet waste, which is the amount of batter that is scrapped, because like when the clamps down,
Uh-huh.
some of it will go out the edges. Well, they measured that. They knew how many ounces of wet waste they had, and that was like a big hot item. And they were always talking wet waste, and I was like, what the
Yeah,
so
what's
it, yeah, and I've never encountered it anywhere else. But that was, for them, it was huge. So we have to understand, like, oh, the current solution, this is what you get, this is your performance. Um, you know, so now at least I have a basis of where we want to proceed moving forward. Like, if we have a coding candidate or don't, like, because you may learn, like, what they're doing now, like, we don't have anything that will work any better, because of their very, unique environment or something like that.
Hmm. Yeah.
So we want to know that like what the current solution is, but then we also really want to know all the numbers. Like, I want to know the economics of what they're currently doing. And this is where it gets dicey. Like when Chris was just saying how they don't want to give you information, this is where they'll hold out. Because we
Yeah.
want to know, okay, so what is, from soup to nuts, what is the current solution cost you, and what is it delivering in terms of performance? Because then we can, it's an equation at that point, and we can now use that as a measuring stick for any new solutions that we have. So as we're really trying to dig into this stuff, it's is having an understanding of the performance, the application cost. Are they shipping them out? What are those costs? What's the back and forth of that stuff? Is there things like regulatory support or anything like that needed for their current solution that may not be needed for our solutions? Like, so there's a
Hmm.
lot of different things that can weigh into it. And the more numbers we get, the more data we get, the better off we will be at the end of this whole process to validate what our solution is and how it can deliver more value to them. But like I said earlier, this is where they'll hold out, because they know what we're trying to do too. Those guys aren't dumb. They know we're trying to, like, show and
Value
demonstrate value,
price.
and
Hmm.
they don't want to get value priced. They want to drive the cost down. So this is where sometimes it gets tough to get those numbers. And it's not like you're going to go to a meeting. If you do it face to face, you're in the plant, you're at the conference room, they'll have 8 or 10 people, and damn well somebody in that room knows those numbers. Nobody's going to say them. Like it,
Yeah.
this is like, sometimes you have to work around the system a little bit and kind of backdoor some numbers, or at least narrow it to a range, and then get that range and make sure everybody is like on the same page. Like, hey, so this is what you're doing now. If we can get to this mark, that's a win, right? That's success, right? And, get
Yeah.
everybody to agree.
Yeah. Okay. That totally makes sense. And I can see how a range would be a little less it it gives you what you need for some sort of information without making them feel like they've opened up their kimono and shown you, like, given everything away.
Right.
So,
Well, and at least if you have a range, you can start tightening that range over time too.
mhm.
The more you start getting some like results from the trial, you can be like, hey, you know, if it was here, would that be better for you? You can almost like backdoor into some tightening of those numbers.
Yep, I've definitely seen you do that before. Um, yeah. And what about Wolfie, when it comes to their current solution, does it even matter how their solution is done, if it's in-house, if it's sent out?
Well, it can be. I mean, if it's done in-house and you know that I mean, if they're asking me to do some work, then that's probably not in for the long haul. So, they may just again be coming to me because I got a coding option. But just some other things to consider too is you want to get parts. I mean, can that part be removed, or is that part like vital to production and I can't be without it? So you might have to wait for downtime or something like that.
Maintenance. Yep.
So that I can actually address the issue. Or, do they have backups? And if they have backups, it's great. Because you obviously can shrink that window of when you can get those backups in, code them so they can put them in place. But I mean, if those don't exist, I mean, now you're kind of playing the waiting game, because you got to find that opportunity when you can, coat those pieces for them and get them back in place. So
That's
those
the
are tough
toughest
ones.
scenario. The toughest scenario is when they're like, we're closed for maintenance. So you got to pick the parts up, get them coated, and bring them back by Sunday night.
Yeah.
Like those are the ones that are really tough for our customers.
Yeah, that doesn't sound ideal. Is there like I guess, is it more likely to have something like that, or is it more likely to have something that's more kind of long term and there's easily parts are replaced and they have backups?
I've seen it both ways. I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a tough one to answer. Yeah, because it could go either way. I mean,
some
and
of it
we've had
depends. I was gonna
we've
say
had
some of it
ones, Mike,
depends
that
on
have
the
gotten shut down because they didn't have an extra part. Like they're like, oh, and you just either they never come back around, or they just don't have the flexibility, which kind of
or
sucks.
it could
Mm.
be like the molds or the tooling or whatever is really expensive, so they don't want to have extras because it's just
Yeah, it's too
a
cost
big
prohibitive.
investment. Hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's good to get all these questions and understand what their current solution is so that you can really deeply understand the problem. And then that will hopefully prevent you, or you're trying to prevent yourself from repeating mistakes that have already been made, doing
Exactly.
work that already doesn't work. But are there any other benefits to gain from that kind of background knowledge?
I mean, outside of, I mean, the question you're asking me, are you asking me like what other things could we be measuring in this case? So like to get an understanding of like, waste and scrap and rework and things like that. Yeah, we would definitely need to know that. How long to failure are we looking at a time study type of thing for this
Mm-hmm.
new part? So, stuff like that is definitely important to know. Because there's got to be some expectation setting. You're coming to me, you're asking me for a solution, and I want to provide one to you for sure, but I need to know what are the expectations here. Because what I think might be a success may be a huge failure for you. Like you
Yeah.
were
So
looking
it's
at
like,
my solution thinking like it was going to last for years. Like, oh, well, Teflon, like you never have to, put anything on it ever again. And nothing's forever, man. I mean, that's just it's the way it is.
should I make the joke? Even forever chemicals. No, I hear what you're saying. So it's like you get the background and really you get as much as you can. There's always going to be something to uncover, but at some point you're moving to what you're calling expectation setting, which I think I would be like, we can agree it's understanding what does success look like to them, because
Exactly.
that's
Right.
what
Hmm.
really matters, right? And
Sure.
Yep.
so what are some of those critical success factors, and then how are they sometimes measured?
Well, I mean, like I said, we talked about it like scrap. Like, do I have
Yeah.
a huge number of rejects now? And I'm trying to fix that because, like we were saying before, like I have guys that sit around and all they do is fix molds that come out and shave them because they don't come out very well, and things like that. Or, yeah, man, Chris, I'm sending my parts out to get recoded all the time. Like they're not lasting long enough. Understanding that type of stuff. So you obviously have a time schedule here, and whatever the solution is currently is bumping up against that time schedule. They're not running efficiently, so to speak. So it's stuff like that you want to try to flush out if you can.
Yeah, number of cycles, number of releases, number of parts um, manufactured, out of that mold. Could be how long it lasts. Chemical tank, like that's one that you're
Mm.
putting in service, and that thing you don't want to even hear about that for 5 or 10 years.
Right.
So it just depends on the industry. It's a different kind of view of success depending on what the component is that's coded and how it's used and what industry it's in. So that's
Yeah.
part of that upfront work of really understanding what they view as success and how it's going to be measured, and making sure that everybody's on the same page on what that finish line looks like.